Hi there, Cosmic Family. My name is Jalial. I am here to talk about the new moon in Sagittarius that we are going to have on December 19th or 20th, depending on where you are. In the degree 28 with 24 minutes. So people that have planets in the last degrees of mutable signs, Gemini, Sagittarius, Virgo, Pisces, could feel this in a stronger way, but we are all going to feel it because of the aspects and because we all have all the signs in our natal chart. So it is being opened a process of 6 months until May 31st of 2026 with the full moon in this sign. On Sunday, I talked about most of the transits that are participating. So the first important aspect that we could mention it is Sun and Moon uniting, which is happening in every new moon. In this case, in the degree 28, they are going to do so in a conjunction with Venus and Sagittarius in the degree 24 and with Mars in Capricorn in the degree 3. This means that it is in orb of conjunction in mathematical degrees. This indicates that this cycle responds to an integration of masculine energy, which is Mars, and feminine energy, which is Venus, for each one of us. This is about identifying where we need to be more receptive, exploring the experience with this openness to what life can bring. And in other areas, we need to take action, generate a structure, consistency, organization. Also, this indicates that this cycle it is very involved with topics with relationships, topics linked with self-value, purposes, generation of resources, and the beliefs. This is also Sagittarius, the perceptions that we have of ourselves, of the people on the outside, the choices that we do. All of that is making this calling to this very honest listening of our inner truth. And for some people, we are talking about very uncomfortable truths or situations where they have been sustaining themselves in denial. Beyond this, Venus, Sun, and Moon, Mars is in a phase of dissolution of the tensions that it did the last week, and the acts of violence that we saw in the collective, these acts that took relevance as a symbol, they had to do with the square between Mars in Sagittarius and Neptune in Pisces that occurred days ago, that in its manifestation of low consciousness could be acts of violence that are coming from fanatism. But turning back to the event, Sun, Moon, and Venus are in a square with Saturn and Neptune in Pisces. Therefore, on one side, there could be people that are experimenting certain blockages in some areas. Tensions with Saturn many times are related with the scarcity of something or situations that could produce certain frustration, but they are not a punish. It is not life punishing us. They are experiences that are telling us that relationship, that path, that dynamic, that career, that direction, it is not having a purpose of growth in your experience. Or you cannot keep moving forward in the same way because not for everyone it is a totally change of direction. For others, it has to do with a great lesson of healthy boundaries, just something that has been producing energetical drain perhaps for a long time, or that responds to a repetitive pattern in that area. The square with Neptune, it is also indicating that many of these dynamics are being sustained perhaps for expectations that weren't realistic. In other cases, illusions pretty disconnected from reality, or continuing in certain dynamics with the hope that people or situations can change and can adjust to what we see as beneficial. That is not always beneficial. I mean, there are people that have the desire to continue in certain relationships, and those relationships are not contributing with the expansion of their soul. That's why it is very important to understand that some of our desires can be distorted from the emotional lack, the beliefs that we have over our value and deserving, the limited beliefs or structures of thought that are acquired, that are not serving anymore. Something very related with Sagittarius and that I am seeing these days is that there are many people being called to paths that have a lot of purpose, but many times the resistance could be manifested because the calling of their soul it is not adjusting with what they have learned. from their families, the culture, or what they think that society expects from them. And truth is that callings of the soul many times are going to challenge conditioning patterns. So we are not perpetuating programmings of others or paths of others, and we start to do our own path and to reveal our own essence. And there is something very that is a key in this lunation, because it is given in the degree 28, which is placed the galactic center, the center of the galaxy, where there is this amount of stars and this supermassive black hole called Sagittarius A. This means that the experiences that are being presented these days are callings to align with paths that go beyond our egos. They are callings to purposes that respond to a cosmogonic consciousness. It is not only for our personal growth, to live a plenty or expansive reality. It is not only for that. It is to do a labor that we came here to do for the collective in this phase of planetary transformation. That's why many people are feeling this very strong veils. Great veils are falling. These seeds are being exposed, and experiences are being dissolved because they are not part of the purpose that they came here to accomplish. And wanting to force whatever direction that is not in coherence with your inner self, it is not going to be felt good. For some people, the boundary, the limit, it is going to come from the outside, perhaps not in a comfortable way. This depends on what would you need to integrate, what each one of us we have to integrate. In other cases, you could be perceiving this as a loop of repetition in which you feel that you are going nowhere, or the path it is not being opened. For others, these could be like little challenges in the daily life, experiences that are proposing this refinement of the inner coherence in the tiny decisions. Depend on what you need to transit, could be stronger or more subtle experiences. What happens it is that as a form of protection, the mind could create narratives to justify continuing in certain places because of the fear to open ourselves to something new, and perhaps because we don't have rational certainties, which is very linked with squares with Neptune. In the case of relationships, could be linked with the fear of loneliness, or the fear of dealing with the emotional processes, the grief. In other cases, there could be a lot of attachment to a vision that you had of over your path, or what you believed that it should be. Very strong identifications. There are people that have been doing certain career for many years, and perhaps that is not related to their soul anymore, and they are not able right now to see other possibilities, and that could be a very important existential crisis. But crises are opportunities. Other mechanisms have to do with investing energy or focusing in experiences that are a distraction, like dispersing ourselves to avoid facing the decisions. This includes also like addictions or other habits of evasion, which is also linked with Neptune. Sustaining situations with lack of clarity, where we are not establishing like concrete, I don't know the word right now. We are not communicating in a honest way, because Mercury is also in a square with the lunar nodes, because we need to make a decision, because we need to deal with an ending. This is very typical of the shadow of Neptune. We all know, we are all feeling something, but we are not telling what is, or we are not communicating in a concrete way. Also confusion or chaos, could be part of the experience of, confusion, of opening to new revelations. But when that is sustained for a long time, it is also a way of not centering, of not focusing in what is a priority. Like paralyzing ourselves in the confusion, or dispersing ourselves in things that we cannot control. The ruler is Jupiter retrograde in Cancer, that on one side is making this square with that is exact with Chiron retrograde in Aries. So this could also be days where you are feeling that many things are being removed, things that are associated with something very familiar. It could be literally topics related to the family, the home, or aspects that you have absorbed in that primary environment. But many of those things, perpetuating them could generate a lot of pain. And even, there could be situations that are like reactivating the Chironian wound, like injustice, rejection, the feeling of not being seen, or the feeling of being incapable of making expansive initiatives. This is just only a perception. This doesn't mean that it's the true. And again, this is not a punishment. It is to go through those circumstances, choosing beyond the emotions that are emerging. I mean, it is important to give a space to what we are feeling, but not choosing from the amplified emotion and the polarized emotion, whether this is fear, sadness, or anger, because Chiron in Aries could be quite reactive. We have to give ourselves pauses to process and to accompany ourselves and to nourishing ourselves, and then deciding, because even if not everyone is seeing this in an immediate way, it is going to be produced a great growth for the people that are choosing to follow their hearts, letting go of attachments to dynamics or spaces that perhaps they know, but they are creating limitations. And other people are going to notice that even if these Chironian wounds are being removed, there are other things that are not affecting them as much as in other times. Both could be the reactivation of things that weren't totally integrated, but also observing how in other areas maturity has been produced. Because we are doing that, we are choosing. This is not magic. This is the practice that we are putting. Jupiter retrograde in Cancer continues for the rest of December in a trine with Saturn in Pisces. So this could also be the manifestation of fruits, opportunities of expansion, very, very positive, or processes that start to be more fluid while we are acting in consequence with our soul. As the last things that I am going to comment today, because of course we will continue talking about these aspects in the next days. Venus in Sagittarius is going to be in a square with Saturn. It is almost exact, by that moment of the lunation. This is a great push, to develop maturity in our relationships. But also makes a quincunx with Jupiter retrograde in Cancer, which is an aspect that is uncomfortable, not as much as a square. And it is going to indicate that the obstacles that we are putting to ourselves are very related with that primary relationship with our parents, with the family, even with the cultural conditioning from the places that we are born. And for some people, it could even emerge, memories of other lives. But all of that, it is not to use that as a justification, but to take responsibility to change it in the present moment. And on the other side, the Sun and the Moon in Sagittarius are making other quincunx with Uranus retrograde in Taurus. So there could be like tiny disruptive situations, could be in the physical body, could be in the level of resources or experiences that are making us rethink how we are giving value to ourselves, to make adjustments. So when there is this inner listening, when we lose the fear to realize that there are things that we could believe it were some way, and right now they are not that like that anymore, and we have the humbleness to open ourselves to new perceptions, to act in coherence with that, we open ourselves to the miracles, to other opportunities, to manifestations that are confirming us that we can trust in our intuition, even if this implies for some people to go in a different direction from the one they were expecting. Thank you, everyone. See you in the next video. Ciao, ciao.